Good afternoon and welcome to the Road to Recovery, the Road to Freedom with Mark. A few strange things going on there. TV going. Hope you don't mind me sitting up. Headphones blasting in my ear. Boy oh boy. Right, we're up and running now. Welcome to my show. This is the Road to Recovery, the Road to Freedom with Mark, and this is my 28-minute slot every Friday where I talk a little bit about mental health issues, which is, my pet project. Mainly about depression, but also other disorders, some of which I suffer from. Bipolar, which is more highs and lows, swings from one end of the pendulum to the other, and disorders as well, which are not necessarily illnesses. They are not considered to be bad enough to be considered illnesses. Things like OCD and, of course, obsessive compulsive disorder. Those sort of things can affect people more greatly or less. You got it good or you've got it bad. I happen to have it very bad. I cannot stand to put a pen down without having it sitting exactly perpendicular. It has to be. Yes, obsessive. And, a lot of people refer to it as OCD, and then you have ADD, attention deficit disorder. And I hate the way that people abbreviate the bejazzers out of things. I was listening to a radio ad, and this chap was going on about some stuff that he sold, and it was absolutely nonsensical. It was so abbreviated that you couldn't work out what on earth he was talking about or what he was selling. I'm sure it made a lot of sense to him. I'm sure that he knew that product, its catalogue number and price, no doubt. But he was so lazy, so useless, so arrogant that he would use slang speech that he was familiar with, but no other. Why abbreviate something if nobody understands you? So I would encourage you all, please do not buy in to what seems to be becoming a current trend of abbreviating the bejazzers out of something to the point where nobody can actually understand what you're talking about. You talk to include, not to exclude. That's not what it's about. It's called communication, people. Come on. Please, make an effort. And speaking of effort, if you see me in a shop, please don't disappoint me. Don't let me walk out of there with a sour taste in my mouth thinking, oh no, another disappointment. Another idiot who doesn't care and is just there to collect his pay. We only get one crack at this. This is not a practice run. This is it. This is the real deal, the one and only. So try to be better. I try. I'm not trying to talk down to you from in high. We all had to learn. But I did learn. I did make the effort and made my life better, other lives better, enriched myself and others. And you can do that too. Otherwise, you are the problem. And this is true with mental health. It is easy to disregard those less fortunate than you. It's easy just to walk on by and not even bother to look down. But it is extraordinarily rewarding to save just one soul. Indeed, if you save one soul, it is as if you have saved the entire world. It's from the Quran. Never a truer word, eh? We are the difference makers in our lives if we choose to be, and we are role models and leaders if we choose to be, and we are pathetic chaff if we choose to be. And it is all about choice. Never anywhere in the world have I seen a people so sad and apathetic as my own, and that is a sad indictment on us. Oh well, never mind. She'll be right. That seems to be the prevailing attitude in this country. And I tell you, she won't be right. Not now, not ever. Unless you do something about it. You know, if you want this place to be better, then it starts with the way that you interact and behave with those less fortunate than yourselves. Spare a thought for people who are broken, people who struggle with mental health issues. They can be fixed and rejoin society whole and contributing and as good as they can be. But we need to make an effort to stoop down and pick up those that are broken, and if we do not, then we are the poorer for it, not just them, us too. So we are in this waka together, all of us, and we need to make a difference, and that's what I'm asking, demanding of you, is that you step up, you know, and you can do that just by getting involved, just by spreading the word, by saying to people, hey, you know, get involved in this, you know, get involved in your community. So before I start my story today, and I'm going to have to romp on through it, I just want to say a big thank you to T.G. McCarthy Trust for sponsoring our show, and to Michael and Veronica at Era Radio, to Wairarapa TV, for empowering people who would not necessarily otherwise have a voice. And I think you will agree that many of the people who do their thing here have a voice worthy of recognition and worth hearing. So I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who has supported me throughout these years and continue to do so. It makes a big difference in my life, and I hope in some small way I make a difference in other people's lives, even if it's just to be thought-provoking. I hope I do that at least. Well, I've got a beauty for you today. An amazing experience I had one June. Northern Hemisphere, so she was hot. This one here is called the Running of the Bulls. Every long hot June in Pamplona, Spain, they indulge in an age-old tradition. The town triples in size before the locals let the bulls loose on the crowd. In an organised kind of mayhem, they block off a route through the medieval part of the town. At the bottom of the hill, they release the bulls from a huge set of wood and steel gates. This starts at dawn, and anyone mad enough to choose to run the course must run for their lives along the course to the arena. The tourist shops there are full of postcards with pictures of terrified locals and tourists alike dodging rampant angry bulls. You can't help but laugh at their dilemma, yet a twinge of trepidation creeps in, knowing it will be me tomorrow. We send a few cards to friends with funny comments and false bravado. We had made it to the first day from San Sebastian, where 5 of us in a combi van had been partying hard, watching reruns of Catch-22 and old bull fights where matadors get gored by bulls, drinking the local sangria all day and dancing all night. Pamplona for 1 week would be the party central. Celebrations bordered on the religious, but for the 5 of us, only myself and Seedy were up for the ultimate challenge, the bull run itself. The others were happy to eat, drink and party all night. We set up camp. We had found a large river frontage where we set up camp, and other combi vans were drawn like moths to flame until it resembled a village. Seedy and I decided to check out tomorrow's route, so we had an idea of what we were in for. After checking out the tourist shops, we decided to walk the route we would run the next day. It was very hot, the sun belting down off high stone walls and cobblestone streets. The roads were narrow and afforded little to no protection from oncoming bulls. Getting some distance on them would be crucial to making it to the arena in one piece. About halfway along our walk, in a pretty run-down, dodgy-looking part of town, a tubby guy with a big, broad smile caught my eye as he happily whispered, "Hashish," in my ear. What was that I required with a smile, as he produced what looked like a large ball of horseshit. "What do you want for that?" I inquired suspiciously. It worked out at about 40 British pounds, so I took a smaller lump for 10 quid. The chubby Moroccan chap seemed pleased and promised to catch up tomorrow. "We may be high as kites by then," I mused to Seedy. After stocking up on booze in the form of sangria and cheap wine, we headed back to Combi Village, which was walking distance to a bar where we set up headquarters for drinking and planning. After spending all afternoon eating and getting liquored, we headed back to camp and lit up a fire. Remembering my dubious purchase of hash in my pocket, I asked Seedy and the others if they wanted to go. Pretty soon we were all stoned as crows, staring at the fire and giggling like fools. Not only was this shit real, it was potent as could be. There was plenty to go round, and still more for tomorrow. We turned in before midnight, determined to get up before dawn and head into town. We slept fitfully, our thoughts filled with eagerness for the bull run to begin, and Seedy woke me whilst it was still dark. I climbed into the passenger seat and rolled up a massive spliff. Seedy got behind the wheel and refused my eager offers, so I ended up massively stoned by the time I got to town. We parked up near the start of the run and hurried down to the start, reassuring each other and laughing like kids. Once down on the start by the huge gates, we donned red neckerchiefs, as was the local custom, to show bravado in the face of fear. A 3-minute alarm bell rang out amongst what was by now a huge crowd, and in the panic many of the foreigners started running up the hill from the gates, to a huge amount of derision from the locals and those foolish enough to stay. The locals whipped into a fervour of dancing and shouting, waving up rolled newspapers in the air, and before too long the gates were opened and the bulls released into the waiting crowd. The locals set upon the bulls, whacking them on the shoulders with rolled up newspapers, which cranked up the bulls no end. Upon seeing this, I tore off up the hill, so fast my feet barely touched the ground. The crowd was not far behind, leaving the confused and angry bulls to follow slowly as the steep slope slowed them down. Now I understood how we would stay ahead. I relaxed to a jog and took in the scenery. All along the road, people were crammed into first-floor balconies overhanging narrow streets. They shouted and cheered at the top of their voices, waving and throwing stuff, and I waved like a football player who has just scored a goal. After a short while, Seedy caught up with me. "Better get a move on, they're catching up," he shouted over the din. We both picked up the pace and looked back to see the bulls had reached the top of the hill and the crowd beginning to part around them. Already bodies were beginning to fly or dart away from the angry beasts as they began to pick up speed. Once on the flat, the bulls were outpacing the runners and began to reel us in. With our progress impeded by the crowd, it soon became obvious we would be caught, and a palpable sense of fear swept through the crowd with lots of shoving and shouting. A few more 100 metres and the bulls were upon us. I looked back to see bodies flying and made a dive into a 150mm doorway entrance, whilst Seedy dived into the gutter, covering his head. That same look of terror from the postcards painted on our faces as bodies flew in all directions and the bulls rumbled through. After a few seconds of panic, the panic moved forward, and realising we were in one piece, we joined the melee from the rear, shouting as more bodies got poked and trampled on. We followed the mayhem up to the arena at the end of the course, broke off and entered the arena. Inside, a crowd gathered in the centre as the bulls were corralled outside, then allowed to enter one at a time. The crowd in the middle formed up in a V shape towards the oncoming bull, which would either shy away or go ploughing straight in. When a bull ploughed in, the crowd would scatter in all directions, people zigzagging and running in tight circles to keep clear of the bull's nasty horns. As the crowd got more drunk, some took to sitting in the front of the V, and one or two took a horrible beating. The ambulance outside did a roaring trade all day. I was far too stoned to join the mayhem and was quite content to drink, shout and be entertained by the crazy crowd down on the sand. No television could do justice to the fun we were having, watching the bulls wreak a little revenge on the crowd. So we watched until the proceedings ended, then wandered back to the centre of town for more partying. The streets were overflowing with bands playing traditional music and people dancing, drinking and shouting. At the centre of the throng was a place called the Muscle Bar, with a square full of people and a statue where people started climbing and doing dives off into the crowd. People below them were catching them as best they could, but many were falling through and getting smashed on the cobblestones below. They would then be dragged off to the waiting ambulance. All 5 of us had met up by now, so we tried to catch as many drunken fools as we could until our arms became too sore and we left them to the inevitable fate of their stupidity. As the night of smoking, drinking and dancing wore on, it all became a bit of a blur, but somehow someone managed to drive us back to Combi Village, where we lit a huge fire and shared the rest of my premium Moroccan horse shit. The day of the first running of the bulls was over for us, but we vowed to stay on and watch some more, along with one of the bullfights scheduled for that week. Alrighty, I was going to play you a song, but I think we'll crack on with the story because time is a-ticking and I am a slave to the clock. So please bear with me and we'll crack straight on. We'll go on to the bullfight. The day after our first running of the bulls, we rose quite late and decided to catch an afternoon of real bullfighting. It was another scorching hot day, so we took plenty of water and drove the combi to town. People were still partying hard in the streets, with some unconscious bodies lying about. I had very mixed feelings on the way up the hill. On the one hand, I was going to watch some fine bulls being slaughtered by a matador and his cohorts. It would happen with or without me. On the other hand, to have an informed opinion on this, was it not better to witness this thing? To be absolutely fair, I had to go, for fear I miss an essential part of the whole cruelty debate. So it didn't bode well when entering the complex we walked past badly scarred horses belonging to the horseman whose job it is to sever the shoulder muscles of the bull with a spear. The armour the horses wear hardly seems adequate, and I feel for the poor creatures. Before the picador comes the toreador, usually other matadors, who stick small spears into the bull's shoulders with great leaps over the horns, showing great agility and courage. Then the picador, on horseback and with an armoured leg guard and horse for protection, he maims the bull's upper shoulders permanently. This stops the bull from being able to turn too sharply and catch the matador off guard. If he does too thorough a job, the crowd boo and jeer him, pelting him with oranges, drink cups, and often bottles are thrown. Thirdly and finally comes the matador, with his red cape and single rapier with which he sticks the bull down the neckline and through the heart. The matador first carries out a series of passing sweeps of the bull by encouraging the bull to charge at his cape. With each sweep, in the blazing heat, the bull gets slower and more tired until run to a complete standstill, so the fatal blow can be delivered. A terrible ending in the ring for the bull, if all goes to script. But that is not what the crowd hope for. They chant for Toro, the bull, to get the better of the matador, goring or even killing him in the ring. The blood the crowd truly lust for is that of the matador, and that afternoon we saw just that. In the third match of the day, a particularly large black bull was set to by the ranks, yet seemed to hold up well against the early spears. The young matador stood proudly centre ring, unfurling his cape and doing some passes, which became closer and closer. Still the bull showed great stamina and kept charging relentlessly. The crowd grew restless, even booing the poor matador. A chant of Toro, Toro now started up, and still the bull continued to charge. With great urgency the matador performed a little longer, then made his mind up, revealing the rapier to deliver the final blow. But he was wrong, and the bull still too fresh. As he came forward with his sword, the bull charged again. The rapier glanced off his shoulder, and he hooked the matador cleanly in the guts, lifting him off the ground. The crowd as one leapt to their feet, shouting, "Toro, Toro," at the top of their voices, as the matador staggers to the ground. Visibly shaken, he regains his composure and tries to deliver the fatal blow a second time. Once again he misses. The bull picks him up and smashes him into the ground, almost running him through with a horn. The crowd is whipped up into a frenzy as they bay for the blood of the matador. Badly damaged, the matador staggers to his feet to try a third time, and to all our dismay, the bull is killed on the third lunge of the injured matador. The magic is suddenly ended, yet it is unlikely the matador will ever fight again after his failure in this fight. The poor dead bull is dragged out of the arena to claps and cheers for his bravery. And I realise another dimension of bullfighting that was not previously appreciated. I felt sick but elated together at the conclusion of that epic match. I could appreciate the Spaniards' love for such an exhilarating sport, but at the same time the death of these fine animals was hard to take. Not having those hundreds of years of tradition behind me lended an unbiased opinion, but robbed a little of the appreciation. The skill and bravery of all is beyond question, and the cruelty is palpable. It was a step back in time that I had never experienced before, and never will again. I imagine little has changed through the centuries, the pomp and pageantry of the costumes or the bravery of their foe. Such old traditions cannot be cast off lightly by its people, as tradition blends into identity. At the end of the day, we went back to the bar near Combi Village to get a feed, get drunk, and talk over the day's bullfighting. Opinions varied greatly as to the merits of the sport, but the skill and bravery required were undoubted. I believe doing the bull run and watching some bullfighting live added some perspective that others who had not seemed very aloof. To grow up as a local and be awash in the culture adds another perspective again. There is no middle ground in this, such as the passion and joy of the event itself. It is impossible not to get caught up in it all. Some of the love of the moment rubs off on you. More intoxicating than liquor or hash, it takes a place in the heart. I look back on those hot days of Spanish summer wistfully. Time and distance turns the perspective to finest and most memorable moments. The feelings of adulation and terror mingled with such humour, fun and dancing. Life well lived, with passion for the moment, and one bite lasts a lifetime. The end. Boy, it's amazing, you know, what triggers a memory. As I was reading that, I could visualise a young man some 35 years ago, and my friends at the time, now dispersed all over the world. The things that we did, the things that we saw, oh, those were the days, my friend. Yes, indeed. What a wild and wonderful time I once had. You know, depression has got the better of me in many ways, and sometimes things break like a mirror, and you can never quite put it back together 100%. The cracks are always going to show. But, you know, all is not lost. There will always be opportunities as long as I draw breath, and I have to remind myself of that, and that at least gives me some degree of solace. I hope you enjoyed today's story. I hope you make the effort to be a difference maker and make this world a better place, even if only for one other person. I mean, it's better than none, isn't it? I hope you have a good week. Thank you very much to T.G. McCarthy Trust, to Wairarapa TV, good on you, to Michael and Veronica, who are ever so kind and thoughtful. Thank you all very much, and thank you for watching. Tell your friends, tune in. They just might enjoy it. I certainly do. I hope you do. And I hope this spreads to become a phenomenon where people start to get more interested in what's happening around them locally rather than what's happening on the other side of the world, which really is far more superfluous than the here and now, my friends. Be involved in your community. Share and learn and make this community a better place. That is what I ask of you. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to doing my show next week. Bye for now.